Hi, everyone. I'm Christy. I'm one of the festival coordinators as well. But before we launch into it, I know Mia just did, but I would like to start off this panel by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands in which we meet and pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and welcome any Indigenous and Ngunnawal people here today who are joining us. So my name is Christy Clark. I work with Give It, the Give It lady here at ACT. We're a not-for-profit that helps matching things that you have with those who need it most. But I'm just going to be acting as a facilitator today at this panel discussion. So this is our first one, which is all about in your own backyard. So we are joined today by three fabulous panelists. On our end there, we have Sammy. So Sammy is the founder of the amazing online platform Rosella Street, which is all helping us add to that circular economy, finding a safe place for us to be trading items, gifting items, renting items. So she'll give us more detail about that. Then in the middle, we have the fabulous Brook, who is creator of Capital Scraps, which probably, hopefully many of you know. If you don't, you'll all know by the end of the day, as well as the EO for the organization Sea Change. And then the third and final panelist is Jess here. She was actually the ACT Young Environmentalist of the Year for 2021. So please welcome Jess, as well as she wears many hats. She works for the Capital Region joint organization, thank you very much, in that waste reduction space, and has lots of tidbits to share. She's also been one of the creators of this festival today. So welcome to our panelists. I'll sit down so I'm not just like standing here with you, but basically how it's going to work is, because this is a community festival, it's not about us just talking at you for the next little while. We want you guys to ask as many questions of us. We want to answer questions that you have, educate you in the spaces that are really important for you. And if we can't get you an answer right now, we will get one in the next couple hours, so don't leave. But so just to kick it off, I'll let you do like a minute intro of yourselves, and then I'll just ask the first question, if that sounds good.
Sure. I'm glad this works. Hi everyone, my name's Jess. My pronouns are she, her, and thank you so much for that introduction. That was wonderful. I feel like I'm so prepared because I just bring my water bottle everywhere, and this is just so bougie and fancy. I wasn't expecting that water, but that's lovely. Hi everyone, so nice to see you. So I work as a waste and resource recovery officer at the Canberra Region Joint Organisation. That's just such a disaster, isn't it? CRJO. It's a local government organisation that represents 10 Southeast New South Wales councils. I also do a lot of volunteering across Canberra, specifically with Trash Gather, who are a bunch of legends who pick up litter. And I've also been coordinating all of the stalls for today. Thanks so much.
Do you want to let us know a bit more about you, rather than just my very brief intro?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Brook Clinton. I started Capital Scraps composting for a number of different reasons, but partly to put my science knowledge into action. I have a PhD in biochemistry and microbiology, so I can get really nerdy about this kind of stuff, but composting is just fantastic because it's also very on the level and everyday. And then when I'm not composting, or moving lots of little buckets around, I am the executive officer at Sea Change. Sea Change is an environmental charity that has been around in Canberra for quite a while, but we're very grassroots, and we're very much all about community action on anything to do with sustainability.
Right, and Sammy.
Hello. Yeah, so my name is Sammy. I'm the director and co-founder of Rosella Street. So we're an Australian-based business started here in Canberra, and essentially we're a marketplace. It's kind of like Facebook Marketplace or Gumtree. But what we're trying to do is help people to be more mindful of the way that they consume and supply them with a smart technology solution to be able to link them together in a safe online space to be able to do that. So we work Australia-wide at the moment, and we've partnered with the likes of universities, councils, and also individuals as well.
Great, well, thank you. I'll just kick it off and ask a question. So we're really talking today, this panel is about at home, really. So I know that many people here might already have some practices that they have in place, but we want to start that conversation about whether you're a newbie, it's not really on your radar about reducing waste, or you feel like you've already been trying to do everything in your handbook to reduce your own waste footprint. Let's just kind of kick it off with that space. Like, what do you find in your experience, ladies, from your personal practices has been one of the easiest switches you've made at home that's had probably one of the biggest impacts that you've noticed? And anyone can answer.
I'll go first, just because it makes sense. Food waste is definitely a passion of mine, not causing it, but stopping it. So composting is like, yeah, it's so important to do, and it's gonna cut out so much of your waste just purely by diverting that waste from the red bin lid to either capital scraps or your own compost in your backyard or on your balcony. If you have worms or whatever, that's probably my secret. Well, it's not really a secret, but my top hit. Definitely like bang for your buck, composting.
Yeah, composting. While we're staying on that, and I might kind of go back to this question about tips. Does anybody in the audience have kind of a burning question about composting? I know a lot of us already do it. I know a lot of people that might live in a smaller space and they say, I have now got all this amazing compost and I don't have the time to actually garden and put this compost somewhere. Maybe Brooke, do you want to speak to some solutions that we have in place in Canberra for people who are, creating compost, but then just don't have anywhere to go and are just surrounded by it?
Yeah, how many people, hands up in the audience, have heard of share waste? Not everyone, that's fantastic. Share waste is an Australian invention. It was started by a couple of women in Sydney. But it's basically just an online map. You can access it through any browser, or they have an app version as well. But the idea is that if you are someone who really loves your composting, or maybe you have a whole flock of chickens that need feeding, and you can put yourself on the map and then let the community come to you. So if you're willing to spend your time and like me, get a little bit nerdy about composting, then that's a really wonderful thing you can do for your community. But there's also no shame in saying, look, I just don't have time to do my own composting. I've got one of the people that subscribes to our service. She put it really nicely. She's in a townhouse. She does have a small courtyard, and she's like, technically I do have space for a compost bin, but it's such a small courtyard that I want to be looking at pretty flowering shrubs and other things, not just an ugly black plastic bin. So she's happy to use our service. And the good news about that is that if we do it at the community level, there's a whole lot of environmental benefits that come from that. So one single household composting their food waste tends to be a little bit inefficient. But once you gather up a few households in a small geographic region and kind of combine your forces, then things really start heating up and happening, literally. But I thought I'd just go back to the initial question in terms of, I was pre-warned about the question of like, what's the easiest thing you could be doing? And then I think Christy tacked on the second part of that question, that has big impact. But I like to remind people, just tackle the small things and don't worry about the size of the impacts. For instance, composting is great, but what we really need to do is cut down the amount of food waste before it even gets to that point. We want to avoid the food waste being generated in the first place. And so one of the really simple switches that we did in my house is we don't peel carrots anymore. And probably a bunch of you have made this transition as well. Like, oh, it turns out that carrot peel is quite tasty. And especially if you're cooking up the carrots, like you don't even notice the difference. And immediately you've cut out on some menial labor and as well as cutting down on your food waste. So those little things really do add up. So yeah, keep in mind the small things.
Awesome. Thanks, Brooke. Sammy, do you want to share yours?
Yeah, I think composting is just such a great way that we can all do a little thing at home. I find for me personally, it's just such a great way to slow down as well. I find that it goes from the start of preparing your food and then putting it into your compost bin or to your worms, and it's just so great to see it provide nutrients to your garden if you have one, if you have the space for a garden, and to slow down and really be mindful of what you do. But for me personally, I think the thing that's been really easy to implement is just diversifying what you do. It's not just one thing that you can do in your home. It's all of these small things together that's really going to make the most impact. So I really think that just trying different things and reducing the amount you do just as a blanket is really going to help out.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point in terms of it not just being, I think there's that idea that sometimes is attached to it, even like with the name of the festival, zero waste. And I think that can be daunting. People feel like it has to be an all or nothing tackling. And that's something that we really want to shift that mentality around. It's like you can do waste reduction really poorly and you're still making a difference, like in that, and that's it, where it's like, do I have to grow my own food? Do I have to do all of those things? No, even if it's just that, like, I'm not peeling my carrots. I know personally for me, it's like the salt plastics recycling. Like I noticed that for just visually a huge impact in the amount of rubbish that was going into my landfill bin, as opposed to putting those and returning them back to your local drop-off centers and supermarkets. So it's, doing that really like poorly and it makes an impact as well. Any questions from you guys? Yes.
So you know how like there's the right way to compost like biomolecular. I've heard before you should put food in it because it will break quality of the compost eventually. But I don't want to chuck it out, so I compost. I just wonder, like, how do you deal with prioritizing out of the compost and prioritizing the waste reduction?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to answer this. I get these kinds of questions all the time. Often, sometimes I give the really annoying answer to a lot of these questions, which is, it depends. And some of you in the audience might be wondering about another option for composting, which is government services, and we are going to get a government service here in Canberra very soon. But the reason that I started up Capital Scraps Composting was to really drive those environmental benefits and get the maximum environmental outcomes. So we do hot composting, and so we can definitely tackle cooked food. The main issue with cooked food is it tends to have oils and things in it, and that is a little bit more challenging for the bacteria when it comes to breaking down those molecules. But yeah, it depends what sort of composting you're doing, or worm farming, or bokashi, or there's so many different, like composting ain't composting, there's so many different methods. So and that's something, if you do engage with a share waste host and you're like donating your food waste to them, they'll tell you what works in their system. So it's a matter of matching up the process with what's doable. At Capital Scraps, we keep it really easy for people though. Our main limitation is we don't do meat, and that's because we are able to do the composting right within the suburbs. We have 5 community composting hubs that are in very public places. We've got one nearby in Hayes Park. But if we were to put meat in those systems, it would just cause too much odour. So we're hoping to scale up and do a bunch of different experimental compost heaps to tackle more challenging items in the future, like different packaging items as well. I would get a bokashi system for sure. A few years ago when I was living in an apartment, and I had a bokashi bin, and they can be a little bit finicky, but once you get the hang of it, they're a really good option. You do need, the final step is you have to bury the material. And because I was living in an apartment, I had to do a little bit of guerrilla gardening to finish off that final step. A big thing that I want to talk about today is acting together on the community level. And for instance, there's a really fantastic community group down in Melbourne that they all have bokashi bins, and then they get together and they have like a working beat once a month where they bury their bokashi waste in raised garden beds, and it's all kind of like scheduled out and well organized. And yeah, there are options for everything.
What I'm just going to throw something out to Mia, who's sitting in the audience right now, who's the founder. I was going to say that's something that we can share on our socials after this. Like that's a really important one that came up. So maybe sharing some more links as well to a lot of these services, as well as the different types of composting out there, like the bokashi system. So we will do that. So keep an eye on our social pages for that, so we can give you the links to it. Awesome. Any other questions? Yes.
I have what I think is probably quite a dumb question. I have one of the ugly blunt plastic composting bins in my backyard. I very, very rarely turn it over. It seems to stay at a stable level. It's got lots of worms throughout it. How important is it that I actually turn it over?
I feel guilty now because I'm like taking up the whole session with composting stuff. We should be talking about. Yeah, so I'll try and give a short answer to this. It's a bit challenging, but the longer answer can be accessed hopefully through a new program that we might be running through Sea Change, and we're just waiting to hear back to see if we're getting funding for it. But the idea that I really want to pursue is exchanging volunteering for this kind of learning, and really the best way to learn it is to do it anyway. So, and we already run a bunch of working bees and things at Capital Scraps, but yes, turning your compost, and that goes back to what I said about those environmental benefits. When you turn the compost, you get compost more quickly, and you can really cut down on the methane emissions, and you can have a more efficient process. So there are ways that you can do it if you want to avoid that physical labor, and ways that you can do it with different aerating tools that are not as hard on your back as like really getting in there with the pitchfork and things like that. So again, there's a range of options, but yes, if you can turn your compost, it is a good idea.
Is it like once a week is the standard recommendation? Is that?
Yeah, that's a good rule of thumb. If you're, but probably more important even than the turning is to think about your carbon to nitrogen ratio. So always add in those browns or like the carbon heavy materials. And we've got, might seem a bit funny, but we've got some demonstration items out at the Capital Scraps stall out there if you want to, explore the different options.
Yes. No, I think I saw her. No, you're right. Mia, yes. Yeah, you can ask the question.
I've done two from Sammy about what's the most commonly rented item through your platform, or are there a couple of companies?
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, Rosella Street supports a range of different transaction behaviours. So ones that we know of are buying and selling. But what we allow is for people to rent things that they only occasionally need. It's really great for people, A, for cost, B, for waste reduction, and also C, for space, saving on space. You know, dwellings are reducing in size, so we don't have the luxury of storing a large lawnmower in our apartment, right? So rentals are really, really great for that kind of thing. So we estimate that per rental you can save on average of 4 kilograms of waste from ending up in landfill. So everything that we do, everything that we consume will eventually end up in landfill. So if we can make a change and choose to rent something that you only occasionally need, then it's just such a great way that we can do that. And to answer your question, Mia, it's really kind of like a lot of different things. So DIY things are really great, that we're finding the most popular. Wood. Lawnmowers have been really, really popular. Trailers as well, like a big bulky things that not everyone has that everyone needs sometimes. So trailers are really, really popular, as well as expensive kitchen appliances like Thermomixers and KitchenAids, stuff that you might need sometimes, but they're pretty expensive. And also stuff like party hire things, big stuff that you might need for a wedding or for your children's birthday that you don't want to buy one off and you don't necessarily have room to store. So there's lots of different use cases on how it can work for you, but it's really just identifying the different things within your life that you don't need all the time, and it's making that change to choose to rent instead of to buy it.
That I just had about like 10 ideas right there from that myself. I was like, oh my goodness. Even the Thermomix thing, I was like, I can rent it, I can make all these things, freeze them, and then return the Thermomix. Life has changed going into winter. All right, any other questions from the audience? Is that a hand up there? No, okay. I would love to actually just have you guys share this, because this is something that I think is a really important kind of conversation. We're saying in our backyard, but community. How can we go about having these conversations with people in our lives, neighbors, friends, families, about waste reducing practices without coming across as preachy or feeling like we are, it being a difficult conversation? What have you found as some of these tips to help other people join this movement in a really easy way?
I've got a good one. I think it's just equalizing with someone, because we're all in this together. I know we hear that term so often, but it's so true. We all live in this world. We all share this planet. We all use its resources. And I think, leveling and equalizing with someone and finding something that you both have in common, I think that's the way to start to have those conversations, and not try and push your values on someone that might not necessarily have those same values. So, if it's your neighbor, you're going to have the thing in common that you both live next to each other. You both most likely live in the same kind of dwelling, or you have something in common together, so you can start to have that kind of conversation and so on.
Yeah, great. Anyone else?
I feel like you nailed it, but yeah, finding those shared values is the ticket.
Yeah, I really love this question because it's something I have personally struggled with. I'd say a lot of my friends and people I've worked with have not really been that interested at all in cutting down on their waste or their consumption. And my husband will happily admit that he's learnt a lot and changed a lot just by living with me and me thinking about like the waste footprint of every item that comes into our home. But I'd say my favorite way, is don't try and be too evangelical about it. Definitely don't be pushy, because that just won't work. But just set a good example, and this is where I come back to the acting together as a community. Like if you can come along to a Sea Change event and just turn up, and maybe be in a photo or maybe not, or but just get involved, and slowly everyone else will be like, oh yeah, this is the thing that people are doing, great. And it'll just happen a bit more gradually, but in a positive way.
Yeah, oh, sorry, Sammy, yes.
I was just going to say, we have this really great saying with Rosella Street, it's strength in numbers, and the more that we can rally together, the more that we can achieve.
Yeah, awesome. I kind of think as well, going back when they started to do the ban of the plastic bags at supermarkets, and I like to use that as an example of myself of saying, at first was like very unique to see people walking into the shops with their own bags, and look at how far we've come in a pretty short period of time. Like hardly anybody leaves the house, I see, without having their own shopping bags in tow. And so it is, I think, so important that kind of mass movement was helpful because it was created from, those policies that made that change. But yeah, setting that example in that way and see how quickly we can actually change as a society in those little ways, which have big impact, which is going to lead right into my next question is, so if you're sitting there and you're like, okay, I still love shopping. I'm not going to be planting all my own food. I'm still going to be doing all of this. I still want to buy my kids some, pre-packed snacks for lunches because that's how I'm going to be able to live in life. I can't do everything from scrap. If I'm going to make one change or do one thing, I know we kind of touched on this already, besides composting and food waste avoidance, what else could we do in our household? Or try to be like, I'm going to try this one practice.
Can I recycle my previous answer from the previous question in terms of, do just get involved with a community group, and I mean any type of community group. On the Sea Change website, we have a sustainability map, which is like a mind map of all the environmental and related organizations throughout Canberra. There really is something for everyone. And so at Sea Change, we do try and make it really friendly, and we won't be judgmental. Like if you come along and say, oh, look, I got all of my food in plastic and I drove here in a petrol powered car and I have not yet put solar panels on my roof. And people do come to us and they're a little bit bashful about all those kinds of things that that you probably should be doing or thinking about or changing your habits. But it's much more impactful to just get together with other people that also have those same wishes of like, oh yeah, I wish I had the time to do all these things. And then we can do group projects together and we can have more impact that way.
Yeah, I think just finding what drives you and what inspires you is really important. It doesn't have to be food waste, doesn't have to be composting. It could literally just be like putting aside your lid, chucking it in the dishwasher and then giving it to Lids for Kids. Shout out to Tim. Like, honestly, just find something that isn't a chore. If it's something that is as easy as that, then that's all you have to do, because that might lead to other really great habits which will inspire other people in your life.
Yeah, if you are at all skilled in fixing things, there's like an explosion of repair cafes going on throughout Canberra at the moment. So yeah, maybe you could repair something and then put it up on Rosella Street and see where that goes.
Great idea. Awesome. I love it.
Yeah, I'll add to that. And I think obviously we've talked about diversifying the ways that we can reduce waste, but just the really, really big burden that's happening to our planet is the hyper consumerism that everybody is a part of. And I think, obviously starting a business to try and combat this huge issue, it's something that we all need to really, really be mindful of. And I think, having really, really easy solutions to be able to make a change like that, that's where things like Rosella Street come in and, capital scraps come in and other things. We just want it to be as easy as going out and say buying something new, right? And everybody already has everything that we need. So it's just about changing that behavior and going, oh, I'll just go out to Kmart and buy that new thing because, it's new. Instead, turning onto a neighbour or to Rosella Street and going, oh, there's actually, 6 more of these things and I can get them, and you can save money and you can also help the planet as well.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. So part of what Rosella Street is all about is actually quantifying the amount of positive impact that we're all doing, because in the waste reduction world, it sometimes feels really daunting and sometimes feels like you're not making an impact, and in actual fact, you are making an impact. So what we do with Rosella Street, and it's still kind of in the implementation process, is we give everyone metrics based on how much waste that they save from landfill. And we also have partnered with this fantastic organisation up in the Northern Territory, and we donate $1 from every sale to that initiative. And they plant a bush tucker tree, which again helps save some carbon footprints. And it's just such a great way for us to rally together. And if you can see an actual tangible number of the amount that you're doing, it's a really great way for you to go, okay, yeah, I'm doing something here, and that's, you know, something we can do.
I think that's a really important point, and it's something that's even just come to mind. And a lot of this festival, the whole idea is making us think and hopefully walking away with almost in a way like more questions than even answers and solutions, because that's what's going to drive more. And we do have some like our roadmap to zero waste. So there's some paper up right near the entrance where you can jot down your ideas or things that you want to see more of. We want to hear from you, literally write it down on that piece of paper, and then we're going to try and cultivate that and work towards moving towards a zero waste community. So that's really important. I think something that's come out of this is like the power of data. It's like if you say, listen, we're all busy, you're trying to capture the attention of somebody who maybe doesn't know the ins and outs of all the impacts, the more data we can get out there in terms of, if I'm just doing this in my one household, what does that actually look like in a community sense, in a global sense? Is it making a difference? Because I think that's something that we need to know a bit more of. So just to throw it out there to all of you guys that are the creators as well, like how can we get more data into the hands and into the screens and eyes of community members that say, hey, listen, it's a small step of composting or renting, not buying new, but it actually results in this impact for the environment and for reducing waste. So yeah, I'm just raising that point with no solution. It's like a question. How can we get more data out there? So we're going to wrap up this panel because we've got lots of other things going on. But before we do, I just was going to throw it to everyone. If they had like their one major takeaway saying, I'm here and I only want you to know one thing from me sitting up on stage, like share it, go.
I think the main thing, and I think we've definitely mentioned it a couple of times, is that strength in numbers is really, really the way that we can start making a positive impact. Coming together, having those conversations, leading by example, I think they're really, really powerful ways that we can make a change.
Yeah, I think I'd say just try and talk to people about this stuff. Like, it's a lot of us are kind of struggling trying to reach for that zero waste goal and doing different things in the home. But maybe a bunch of your friends are doing their own things and you're just not aware of it. Like, bring it up as a water cooler moment at work, and just like really casually just keep this stuff being talked about.
I think the zero waste space and sustainability space, from my experience, can sometimes be quite inaccessible for people. There's a lot of privilege, I think, in being able to live a sustainable lifestyle. And so I think it's important for people to remember you don't have to do everything, perfectly all the time. There's so much pressure. And I think there's also a lot of eco-consumerism to be wary of. You don't have to spend a lot of money on some fancy eco product. A lot of the time, there's better solutions if you just think outside the box. So I think just be wary of, capitalism trying to sell you sustainable products and H&M and Zara greenwashing their sustainable clothes. Not to be too cynical or anything.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we do things like that, like clothes swaps and all of those types of things. And things that we're doing, and just making it becoming more of normalizing it and more of the everyday dialogue. So before we kind of close off this panel, is there any other burning questions kind of on this topic, household things that you want to do in your home, but you're a little wary of, or not sure if you should do it, or anything like that? Or have we answered a lot of your burning questions? I'm hoping. Yes, yeah. No. Yes, big yes, yes, and yes. So to repeat that question, because I think it's a really important one, and it's probably something that we should ask everyone here. So if you didn't hear it, it's the desire to create a single point drop off for all of those unique recycling items that you can't put in the yellow bin. Mia, do you want to answer this one?
Sorry, I need to answer this with the Conservation Council's petition. Have you seen the petition that was just launched this morning? And people, so their stall, they've got able to sign it, but basically we're petitioning the government to turn their recycling centres, because they've got, I think, about 5 of them around Canberra, into not just recycling, but also you can drop off unusual items. Hooray! So that's the plan. Please sign the petition, get involved. Let them know that you want to be more involved than just signing the petition, and I'm sure there'll be a way to do it. But absolutely, it's something that Zero Waste Revolution, we partnered with the Conservation Council to put this petition together, and we're really passionate about it as well. There's so much that can be done within current technology, and there's a real willingness from the community. There's just that need to facilitate it. So sorry to steal your panel, but it's important.
And I think that's a really important thing as well. And I think something we need to focus on, and again, like petition for and raise for, it needs to be easy. It needs to be accessible. If somebody has to go to 7 different drop-off points because they want to do pens and clothing or fabrics, textiles, batteries, all the rest of it, it's not going to be something that is a success. So we definitely have to call out for it so that it is easy, because it is. Life is tough. Cost of living is a real issue. There's all of these things going on. We can't, as Jess said, like, we can't just be preaching, saying, oh, just, spend half of your weekend going recycling 25 different things in 25 different ways. I mean, like, hello, who can do that in their life? So we need to come together, communities come together, make it easy, make it just what we do and part of our daily life. And it's not going to happen unless we make it happen together.
Can I just add to that and say, yeah, fantastic to make it easy for people, but that facilitation and kind of behind the scenes organizing to make all that work, like, there is work involved, and I'm sure Tim would nod his head at this point. And I do have one of our fantastic Sea Change volunteers here. I'm going to job you in, Kirsty. Kirsty does run a hard to recycle drop-off station at the Tuggeranong Repair Cafe, which is a wonderful, wonderful. yeah, definitely have a chat. But yeah, if anyone has a spare hour to help with this kind of thing, please get in touch with Sea Change or Lids for Kids or anyone else working in this space. Yes.
Add to that, with our repair cafe, yes, we have a recycling drop-off hub, and some people come down to the event just to drop their recyclables off. We're starting to expand it, Lids for Kids and batteries and e-waste and toothpaste and Priceline containers for makeup. So we're starting to get lots and lots of buckets. But what I'd love to see is, if you go to a shop, you buy the item, that shop should take that item back. All those recycling lines, so its point of sale should have a closed loop, because you're going to go back to the store anyway, rather than say go to a government depot or a pay cafe or a community drop-off centre or a TerraCycle box drop-off centre or something like that. It really should be that point of sale. Like, I know Woolies has got batteries, Aldi's got batteries, they've got Red Cycle. We've got a few of these lines starting, but it's not, across the board. And the big department stores as well should have more of that. I'm going to buy, a new, item or something. I've tried to repair it. I have to dispose of it, but I want to buy a new one, take it back. So I know that there's some lines in some stores that are doing that, but I think it just needs to be more normalised to be like, okay, I'm buying new, here's my old one, sort of thing, or here's the wrapping, whatever it happens to be.
And that's perfect. Thank you. And that's what we're trying to build on today, especially. So as we go through these panels, we're going into the next one, which is the Be a Hero of Zero. So it's really about like, okay, let's get together and let's make this happen. And then the third panel is our roadmap to zero. So that might be one of the key things that we say. We want it to be on the responsibility of those who are actually putting those items out into the world, that they are going to find the solution to bring it back. So let's make that. Mia, I'm going to get another Mia. No, you're talking about that in panel 3 and making it happen. All right, thank you guys. We'll all be kind of sticking around and wondering, so ask questions, don't leave. There's 2 other panels coming up. We're just going to take short breaks in between. Yeah, and that's it. Anything else you want me to add? Awesome. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Sammy, Brooke, and Jess.